Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 7.
I think so.
Nice.
Yeah.
We're getting there.
Mm-hmm.
So we are talking about the second part of Dahmer today.
Yes.
And Karen Kappelman here again has some more. Although
I have some thoughts.
I have some thoughts too. It was a very interesting last couple episodes.
I would say so. So we're doing episodes 6 through 10. So if you haven't watched 6 through 10, there's going to be some spoilers. Maybe watch it first or listen to us talk about it.
Yep. And I just have to say, I have a couple well actuallys. And anybody who is a fan of like pop culture probably wants to crucify me at this point. It's not Wild Horses, it's Goodbye Horses. Wild Horses,
Still safe.
Goodbye Horses. So yes, when you go doot, doot, that is Goodbye Horses.
Well, you kept making that, and I was like, but that's not Wild Horses. Like, whatever you're humming is not a song. It's not Wild Horses, but I thought you were just being...
Yes. So Wild Horses was featured in Fear, which with Reese Witherspoon and Mark Wahlberg, and was a very pop culture-y scene in that. And Goodbye Horses is our ever famous Silence of the Lambs. So
right.
Yes, I do desperately apologize because
I'm glad it's safe.
Yeah,
That's all I care about.
No one pretends to be historians or produce actual facts on the show.
No. You should always fact check us.
Yes. Hashtag fact. I can't even say it. Hashtag fact check. There we go.
There we go.
All right. So episode 6 through 10. Let's do it.
Let's do it. We got to start off episode 6 again with the warnings that there is
smoking.
So just a heads up, guys, if you're watching the Jeffrey Dahmer,
I can handle a lot. Betta fish fighting, and smoking is where I draw the line. So apparently Dahmer should not be on my...
Apparently not.
Yeah, not on my list.
I can't believe they'd have that on there. I just thought it was funny. Okay, and so I do owe an apology to the series because episodes 1 through 5 were so heavy on Dahmer.
Yes.
And I sat here before the podcast, during the podcast, after the podcast.
In text messages at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Railing against them for... I even named one of the episodes, I Don't Care.
Yes.
Because I don't care about Dahmer's backstory. It is interesting to know. Maybe we can help future serial killers not be serial killers from it. But I just felt like it was way too heavy and not enough focus on the victims. So then episode 6 comes out and kicks my ass. And
it guts me.
This is the one that focuses on Tony Hughes, who is a deaf man who encounters Dahmer.
And it's really hard. If you're trying to do other things while you're watching this episode, don't. I was like trying to work, and so I'm like working and looking, and everything is either in sign language with subtitles, so you really need to pay attention to it.
Mm-hmm. And I thought it was beautifully done. I loved how they had so much ASL in there. Mm-hmm. I loved how when they were talking, everything else, they quieted it down. And most movies and TV shows would consider that an awkward silence and wouldn't have that, but they almost embraced it. Like, this is their life.
Yep.
And to me, it almost immersed you more into Tony himself.
And what an awesome light he was. I mean, like, again, we go back to being a light. He lit up a room. But, and I think it gave us a glimpse of what could have been.
Yes.
You know, and I think that's the tragedy in all of it. Because you see parts of, you almost find yourself for a moment, if you can completely forget everything you know about Dahmer, rooting for that love story.
Yes, because he struggled. It showed how hard his life was, being deaf and trying to have relationships, even just trying to find work. He wanted to be a model, his struggles with that, and then he was beautiful.
I mean, he some of his modeling pictures, I was just like, oh, I just love it so much.
He actually could have gone somewhere. And then you've got Dahmer, and this is the only one, and I could never find an answer on this, because previously I'd looked into it. Everything I've ever heard said there's conflicting stories. Either Dahmer was pursuing a relationship with him or already had one with him.
Right.
But either way, this is someone that Dahmer actually took time
to be with.
Yeah. So it it is something you'd root for because you have two of these very misunderstood men who find each other and accept each other how they are. But one of them is Dahmer. Mm-hmm. And one thing I didn't like about the episode is Dahmer's asking Tony, wasn't it hard? Or don't you feel misunderstood? And Tony's like, yeah, I do. And it's almost then showing Dahmer feeling that same way, which I get, but I'm like, no, you don't get the luxury to feel that.
Yeah.
No, I don't feel sorry for you. I don't think we should have that sympathy towards him.
Right.
Because Tony had a very rough life too, and look how vastly different they were.
They were human being wise. Well, yeah, and I think it also, and I'm sure it's the cinematography and all of that, and there's a theory behind it, but I think it really set up well the fact that how desperate a situation. I mean, like, I am watching that whole thing makes me think the tragedy is not so much Dahmer. The tragedy is the fact that it was able to go on as long as it did, and that these people lost their lives. These great men, or and even if some of them probably were not the greatest of men, they didn't light up rooms, but they had families that loved them.
Yes,
they had people that loved them. They had people that cared about them.
They're still humans. Yeah,
but because of the fact that, there's one scene in which the guy goes, okay, well, first of all, you're gay. Second of all, you're black. You don't have a fighting chance. And I think that definitely painted the picture of why Dahmer was going after who he was going after, because society did not think of them as equal beings.
Yes. Yeah. For all of that.
So did you name this episode?
Glamour Shots.
Ooh.
Because Dahmer it shows them going to Glamour Shots, which you and I have talked about needing to post our pictures of Glamour Shots and go.
Yeah, we might
recreate it.
We might need to recreate some Glamour Shots.
I think we should. The feather bows and everything.
My sister is a photographer.
Done.
So I keep sending her things. I want her to do a like the true crime photo shoots with friends. Yeah, I think we need to do that, and then I think we needed to recreate some Glamour Shots.
Let's do it. I'm totally down.
All right.
We'll do that.
Okay. So Glamour Shots.
So Dahmer is trying to date Tony, and it shows them having dates and really connecting and forming this relationship. And then, just when you think Dahmer is softening, Tony tries to leave after a night together. Dahmer's issue kicks in with people always leaving him, feeling abandoned, and he kills Tony.
And he got away the first time, and that was as soon as he comes back for his keys, it's like, no. I mean,
yes. Yeah, because Dahmer goes into kind of that dreamy stage, and you hear the knock on the door, and Tony's back. You're like, Tony, go!
Run!
So that was really sad to see, but also it followed up with Tony's family then trying to talk to the police about it. And as soon as the police find out that he's gay, basically being like, you sure he didn't run away?
Yeah. Well, and I think that just leads, there's something to be, I understand that the police need to be completely analytical, but there's something to be said. If say my kids, if one of them doesn't check in with me, I'm probably like, that's kind of normal. But there's two of them that honestly, if I don't hear from them, I know something is wrong. So as a parent, when they're like, I know my kid,
yes,
they need to listen to some of that. It's just, the whole thing. And getting this episode, you started to really see the people that were affected by the murders. And I think that was heartbreaking.
Yes. And this one was so focused on Tony that's who you really got to know the best.
Yeah.
I feel like out of all the victims, that's one that really
stood out.
Except for Conorak, the 14-year-old boy. So that's kind of episode 6. It shows him starting to become a cannibal with that. And it ends, and it's disgusting.
Yeah.
So then we have episode 7.
Named?
Tense. Not like the
tense.
The tense, like the tense.
Okay.
Because the entire episode, I was, oh my goodness. And I watched it twice. So I watched it once just to watch it, and then I watched it again to take notes on it. Even though I knew what was happening, even watching it the second time, I was just like,
yeah.
So it starts by us going back to when Tracy is escaping. So from the very first episode, Tracy is escaping. Glenda is scared by this because she sees him escape, But she then hears Dahmer being arrested. And this one really starts to bring in more of the racial in a little aspect.
Yeah.
This episode doesn't go into the full upheaval, but it starts that ball rolling. And kind of the politics that you wouldn't normally associate with a serial killer.
Yeah.
Having something turn into a race war. We see the police chief and the mayor discussing how they're going to handle this because of the race, because of it just being a really delicate situation, being gay.
Yeah.
That time. We see the detectives notifying the families, which is
that was heartbreaking.
awful.
Yeah.
Yes. All these parents who had said something is wrong and the police didn't believe them, and now the police are there saying, all right, well, they're dead. And even Glinda dealing with the fallout from her job of she spoke out and gave an interview, and her job coming back to her saying,
you're crying. You're crying a little too much.
Yeah.
But by the way, what was it like?
Did you see any dead bodies?
I wanted to kick that woman.
But that's got to be true to life.
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean, I know some of this is incorrect, but I think some of it is more true than we would want it to be.
Yeah.
And then we see Jesse Jackson come in.
Love me some Jesse Jackson. Yeah, no, it was...
That was fun because it shows his assistant first.
You sure about this one?
Yeah, and then it pans over to Jesse Jackson. You're like, oh, this got fun.
Yeah.
And that's when it starts getting more into kind of that racial spectrum. And I feel like this is really good, and the series was good for this part of it, because it seems like people kind of idolize Dahmer and forget there's this whole racial spectrum that is associated with it.
I think too, and I really didn't realize, I mean, like, when was this, 89?
That he was caught?
Yeah.
91 or 92.
Okay, so I was less than 15 years old. So I didn't quite get the whole race aspect of, really the race or the gay aspect of this one. Until I rewatched, watching this and realizing that this was such a bigger issue than just a sick man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's that's what breaks my heart in all of it, is the fact that these, these people had families, plain and simple. They love, and just because they were and I say this with quotation marks, lesser, because I don't think they're lesser, but they were considered lesser individuals, their murder they were able to get away with murder. So
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And I liked how they did this episode, because then you go back and Glinda tells her side of the story, but she's doing it by talking to Jesse Jackson.
Yeah.
So that was, I thought, a very cool way of jumping back on the timeline, but in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, the one thing I didn't like, and I can't remember if it was episode 7 or 8, is that they were talking about Gacy, which I do seriously believe there was a difference between Dahmer and Gacy. I think Gacy was...
I have that later in the notes.
Okay, then we'll talk about it later. We'll talk about Gacy.
For us to hash out.
Who's in this corner?
Yes, yeah, exactly. I thought that would be an interesting comparison.
But yeah, that whole episode with I don't think it was 7. I think it was later on, with the dynamic between the Eclipse and Gacy and...
You're giving away.
Okay, go ahead. Episode 7.
So Glinda starts going into more of her story. In the series, it was her story, but in real life, they combined 2 women that were involved. So for the series, we're just going to refer to Glinda as one person, that's her, and refer to it in that way.
Right.
She talked about how she smelled him cooking and he blamed it on the barbecue.
Yeah.
How she met Dean, and then this was another tense moment when she says goodbye to Dean. Dean walks out her door. She's about to close it, and then you hear Dahmer's voice. And your heart just stops. You're like, oof. Yeah. I mean, you knew what was going to happen, but still, even just hearing that, and then she's watching them interact, and she can't do anything, and neither can you.
Yeah. Yep.
And then how they went out, they came back. Glinda hears the noises and screaming. Now, the only thing I have an issue with that is Dahmer's MO was that he didn't want them to suffer.
Yeah.
So he would drug them first. So that was the only thing I thought they were probably doing more for the shock value as opposed to in the story.
Yeah. There's definitely, I mean, we're talking about the series and kind of marrying fact and fiction.
Yes.
And all of this, and we realize that. I mean, we definitely recognize that there's, this is not, the villains in the story are not as evil as they are made in this, but neither are the saints.
Mm-hmm.
So
I agree. But from the film-wise, hearing those screams, and then it just stops. Mm-hmm. I thought that was really neat.
And then you hear the whirring, and it's like, okay.
Oh, yes. And you see her, she calls the police, she calls the landlord. It starts really showing you how many times she was ignored, which that part is true to life.
Yeah.
Because he did have a lot of complaints both to the police and the landlord. And then the landlord finally does listen to her and the other tenants and goes to evict him. So Dahmer comes over to Glinda's apartment to offer an apology and a sandwich.
Yeah.
And you talk about nail-biting scene.
Yeah.
And well acted.
Well acted. It made me very angry. There's one of my favorite lines is from a movie called Secret Window, and it's like, I don't like intimidation. It makes me feel icky. Mm-hmm. And that whole, like, it made me pissed off. It made me scared for her. Mm-hmm. And it kind of like, you snot-nosed little brat. Yes. I just kind of wanted to do some damage.
Take back the complaint.
Yes.
And I thought it was so neat. She portrayed that, Niecy Nash portrayed that amazingly.
We just needed to have a moment for Niecy Nash. Okay. Do you know what she started?
Reno 911.
Reno 911.
Yes.
Okay. And she is now this epic, beautiful actress, and I love it.
And she portrayed that really strong scared, because in that scene, to me, she put up such a good, you could tell she was intimidated, but she wasn't going to show him. And I thought, from an actor's perspective, it was brilliantly done. And then once he leaves, being able to see her break down, because the stress of that situation, I needed to break down too.
Yeah. Niecy Nash, we love you, girl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can call us. We'll do lunch. So she never ends up eating the sandwich.
Thank God.
It does make you wonder what was in the sandwich. And he said it's like a pulled pork.
Yeah.
So then she sees him bring back another man and kind of rinse and repeat on that. Hears noises, then silence. Whew. And then again, we see that she tries to call. Her calls are ignored. They say, we'll send someone out. She says, you never send anyone out.
Yeah.
And that's got to be so frustrating, because she was sitting there saying someone's getting murdered, something is going on, and to have the police be like, it's fine.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part for me in realizing, because I see her as being a mother and trying to protect the neighborhood and things like that, and I have not had to experience not being taken seriously. Yeah. And just the frustration, I can't even fathom the frustration she had. And just the fact that she was trying to be a voice for these people that nobody wanted to hear.
Because she knew. Mm-hmm. She knew, and that's what one of the women said in real life. Yeah. They knew what was going on, but no one would listen. So then it shows her in bed crying while the saw is whirring in Dahmer's apartment, and again, masterfully done.
There is not enough profanity for the things that I would say to the police the 15th time I called them. No. But then they had the fear of, because we're going to talk about it in later episodes.
Yes.
But then have the fear of, your aggression about your frustration be converted into a crime and punished.
Exactly. So I think that's really hard. Now, one thing, when she said, he asked, are they still fighting on the phone? And she said no. I was like, say yes. Just say yes.
Can you go over there? Can you go over and see how he's doing?
Who asks that? to Milwaukee police in 1992, apparently. So then the episode ends by bringing us back to Glinda and Jesse. She's told her story. She's told the story of what she's seen, what she's heard, what she's experienced, and says that her voice was never heard, and Jesse promises her voice would now be heard.
Yeah.
And it feels very optimistic.
Very optimistic.
Maybe
Dahmer, an optimistic story.
Maybe the one high point in... No, there's actually another one coming up that I really like later.
Okay.
He does also tell her that the police officers have been suspended that returned Conorak to Dahmer, those two police officers.
And I would like to hope that there's, again, some... I hope they were not as evil as they were made out to be in this film. Because if they are, then they need some swift kick to the balls.
I did a little...
Digging?
Just a little, like, really service, because there was so much to dig in on this, and that's why I don't have a lot of the facts, because it was just, like, everything.
Oh, yeah.
Could take you down a rabbit hole, but one of them was still active until about 5 years ago, and I guess he was good, but really wasn't great. So it's not even like they had their one moment, and oops, big oops. It was more like, just not great.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. So episode 8. I don't have a title for this one.
I'll see if I can come up with one while we're talking.
Because it kind of I started becoming less angry. So
the Karen toned it down in a couple notches.
I did. My hair started growing out a little bit longer. I didn't have the Karen haircut.
Good.
So it opens with Dahmer's dad trying to deal with the idea of what his son had done, and then going to speak with him. It shows him crying and kind of just trying to process everything, and he's still in denial.
He is. And see, this is where, and I knew this was going to come up, and I was like, oh great, she and I are going to have some very different opinions on this. I was insanely frustrated with the dad. I was the mom, and the mom, don't even get me started on the mom. I did have a certain amount of empathy for the father. I still believe there was huge issues there, but he had no clue that his kid was capable of that. And I think that a lot of it, he had his head in the sand. Don't get me wrong, but he always, I think, loved his son and wanted what was best for him, but had no concept of how to help him along the way. And like the fact, I mean, like I think about, we can sit here and say what we would do all day, every day. We're not faced with that situation. Writing a letter to the jail, hoping that he gets alcohol rehab, and then not following up with it was kind of idiotic. I mean, like, I don't understand that. But he was asking everybody to help him instead of trying to learn how to help him himself. I mean, he is definitely, there's major faults there. But there's such empathy because of the fact that regardless of how horrible of an action his son did, he always loved his son and did what was best for him.
Okay. I disagree.
Okay.
I think he did have empathy. I think he did want the best, but to me it almost seems like he did the bare minimum. I do agree that he didn't really know what to do.
Yeah.
But it does seem like he did the bare minimum on what to do. He wrote a letter.
Right.
Now that was brave of him to write a letter saying, hey, I don't think that this is going to...
Oh, I'm not saying he's a pillar of bravery at all.
But he did it.
Yeah.
So there was something there, but there was no follow through. Now he left Jeff alone for an entire summer. You could have done better on that.
Well, and I think he did the best he could with the resources he personally had. You know what I'm saying? I think he definitely could have done better. But he wasn't Father of the Year by any stretch.
But you don't send your alcoholic son to college.
I agree.
And in an actual interview I saw with him, he said that as far as the box situation, which they portray a little bit differently in the series, he pushed Jeff to get him to open this box.
Yeah.
And he said, well, when Jeff I'm paraphrasing, but Jeff seemed to get really agitated on it, so I just told him I'd be back tomorrow and we'd open the box. Like, come on.
Yeah.
So to me it seems like he kind of tried and he kind of wanted to try, but in a bare minimum sort of way. Like, well, if this didn't work, well, I don't know what to do. I got nothing.
Yeah. Well, and see, I took it, I mean, like, and I was the type of parent, and again, I mean, maybe it's the fact that I have, these kiddos are, you know, there have been times that you don't want to know what your kid has done.
Yeah.
And I get, you know, but I was the parent that pushed and pushed and pushed. Now, granted, my kids would never do anything. I would hope, knock on wood, that they would never do anything to this magnitude. But I think he was almost afraid to know what was in that box because he was afraid of the situation.
He said it was because he assumed it was pornography. So my whole thing is, this entire time he's been so scared of who.
You would almost hope it would be pornography.
Well, yeah, and so that's also, you're talking about sticking your head in the sand. You're sticking your head in the sand over pornography. Now, I mean, you can get into all sorts of issues with that, but it's like, but you can't even accept that.
Yeah. No, there were big issues, but I do have to say, I mean, I empathize for the fact that he loved him the best way he knew how and stood by him the best way he knew how. As opposed to the mother who made me want to pull my hair out.
Oh my goodness. She was... But I think that she also had a lot of issues.
Yes.
As well. And I don't know if she had any mental diagnosis.
She had a lot of mental health issues. And I would hope with the amount of medication she was on that she had some diagnosis.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure she did great things for her patients. But as soon as it became... I feel like she really turned it against... She was like... She never wanted to claim him until he was famous.
Yeah.
And then it was... Oh.
I'm his mother too. I'm his mother too.
You just don't understand.
Yeah. And she said in an interview later in real life that she thinks that he never meant to hurt anyone. I mean, I guess in a really twisted way, he didn't want to hurt them. He just wanted them. But I feel like you have to get to a really... The cognitive dissonance involved in getting to that conclusion has to be massive.
She was not. Yeah, she was not.
All right, so... Oh, but this is the part that... And I don't know if this is true to life, but it shows when they're talking in jail, when his dad had his little breakdown, goes to talk to him and says, I want you to get better. We need to have treatment. I need to believe you can get better because I need to know this isn't how I raised you.
Yeah.
And I think that still just goes to show how the dad was still so far in, oh, you can't be like this.
Yeah.
This is not who you are. We need to figure out what caused this.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't me.
Well, and I think we could have an entire podcast series on things that we're still talking about a 1990s dad. Mm-hmm. You know, we're talking about a generation of people. Let's see, he was probably raised by the greatest generation, so we got the staunch.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you have the mix of, you know, Vietnam War, and you have, there was a lot of broken people, and I use broken with all the love in my heart, that were trying their best, and it's not, and mental health was not, it was very taboo at the time. I mean, nothing like it is now. So, I mean, not that that gives him a pass, but I did see some of what the dad did as selfish, but I also, you know, I think of how my dad would try to process this being raised by his dad, you know, and that kind of like, I raised you better. I can't believe this is happening to me, that type of thing.
Well, yeah, because he even talks about how could you do this to the family? What have you done to the family? And it's like, there are so many victims.
What have you done to the families?
Yes, but he's more concerned about the family. So I think you're right. It's a generational thing too.
It's a general. I mean, like I said, and my dad is great. I mean, my dad is awesome, but he would not be prepared for me or my siblings to be Jeffrey Dahmer.
No, well, no, because even when Dahmer says, when you and I would go out and get the roadkill, and his dad said, "Oh no, that wasn't me. That wasn't me."
Well, I mean, it was just, and it was such a way that it was like, I mean, you know, I raised 3 boys, and look in hindsight, you're looking at it and you're like, okay, that's just bad setup. But you know, if your kid is into taxidermy, I guess if you're trying to bond with them, that's a way to bond with them.
Well, and you don't think that taxidermy is going to lead to humanidermy.
That's exactly right.
I don't know what it's called. I don't want to know what it's called.
Yeah, we're not gonna go there.
No.
But like this and everything is tied up in a cute little package in this series. I mean, and that's what I mean. There are things that are said that I'm like, oh, for flip's sake. But it was somebody that was very much trying to come to terms with something that they had absolutely no concept or ability to come to terms with.
But that was something that was interesting about it, because then, like, it follows his dad and the conversation with his dad, and shows how his mom was dealing with it not well.
Who also was in the mental health field, which drove me crazy too.
And then it shows his dad talking about, well, I've had those feelings too. I've had those feelings. But I never found anything, again, not a super deep dive because there's just so much, but I never found anything that his dad actually said that in real life.
He was trying to normalize the situation, which I think was, I mean, because there's a huge difference, unfortunately, between fantasizing that somebody was dead or being able to do whatever they want to do to somebody and then acting on those situations. And I think he was kind of trying to rationalize it. Mm-hmm. And it might have been the series just trying to rationalize it.
Might have.
I did think it was interesting because when he was mopping the floor and they were talking about the best-selling book that the dad was writing, and he has this like look on his face like, oh, I'm glad some good came out of this. Yeah, and that kind of chapped my ass. But
we'll get to the book later. Deep breath. Don't get fired up about that yet. So then we see Dahmer's lawyer and his dad talking to him about pleading insanity and how that could be an option. And then they bring up Ed Gein, which...
Again.
Bad.
You know, and because in one of the scenes, Niecy Nash goes, they were comparing...
we're not there yet.
Okay, we're not there.
You keep trying to talk about this. Sorry. We're not there. Right now we're talking about Ed Gein. Which I think if you're going to... I think it's just a quick... If you compare Dahmer and Gein.
Oh, yeah. Gein for the win.
Yep. It's not even a win. It's a really awful win.
Tic-tac-toe.
Done.
Yeah.
I was going to say Gein would chew him up and spit him out, but...
No.
My bad.
No.
So they tried to use that case as a precedent for Dahmer, but it didn't work. The judge did declare him competent and of sound mind.
Right.
So he got 15 counts of first-degree murder, and then it was going to be decided whether he got prison time or time in a mental facility. The judge basically said, you're getting prison time.
Yeah.
But they still had the victim impact statement, so you see his mom try to do a little bit for her by going and talking to the victim's family, saying, please speak on behalf of my son.
I was really torn by that whole thing.
As a mom, I think she should have done it.
She should have done it 10 years previous.
She should have... Well, it's like the dad. There's a lot she should have done. But I thought that was a really cool way to show that. And even more so, you get to see how the victims are affected. So that's what I really feel like they just kept hitting home.
Yeah.
This is something they had to deal with. This is something they had to deal with over and over and over.
Right.
It shows that Rita Isbell, which was Errol Lindsay's oldest sister, got in his face, which did happen in real life.
And it was spot on.
I feel like that would be me. I don't know how all of those families stood up there and were so calm. I would have fucking killed them.
Yeah, it would not have been pretty. It would not have been a pretty thing. And I think his reaction, and that seemed very true to life, his reaction during the sentencing, you know, and then him saying what he said, I can't remember what exactly he said, but it's like, oh, I never meant to hurt anybody, or I never meant to. It's like, oh my God, just shut your mouth.
He said, and I thought this was interesting because he said what he did wasn't out of hate. It wasn't out of spite. So basically he was trying to say, look, I wasn't killing black people because they were black. Yeah. Now, was he killing them because he could
get away with it?
Yes. But for his motivation, it wasn't anything to do with race. It was just convenience.
Yeah. Which I think is that's what draws the line between, I mean, Ed Gein and the person we're not going to talk about just yet. There is a certain cruelty there. Mm-hmm. What Dahmer did was horrific, but it didn't stem from the cruelty.
Correct.
That these guys.
Because he did show he was remorseful for what he did. He did try and help the police. He didn't want to do what he was doing, and I do believe that because of the help he put forward. So to me, it almost shows the compulsion that he had. I'm not excusing it, but it does seem like the compulsion of just in his brain, he had to do it. So he did. Shockingly, the victims' families did not speak on Dahmer's behalf. Newsflash. Beep, 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 beep. He was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms.
Yeah.
Yay! And I did like this part. So it ends with his dad saying, I should have been more there. I should have been there more for you. You couldn't talk to me. You should have been able to talk to me about this. He didn't help enough.
Yeah. But again, we're dealing with a dad. I mean, like, dads now are just now getting to the point where you could have a conversation with them. I mean, and I'm blanketing statements. We're talking about dads in the 90s.
Yes.
You know, and that's,
completely different generation.
And that's so much of how this happened and why this happened is so generational.
It is.
And that's frustrating. I mean, like I said, when I think about, and I love my grandparents, I love my grandfathers, but they were both very staunch individuals that...
You didn't talk about feelings.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah. Which is probably why I don't talk about feelings now.
No.
That's a whole other podcast.
Ginny and Dia talk about feelings.
It'll be like just a blank video.
We'll just sit here.
We'll share TikToks.
Okay. Instead of addressing our feelings, we're going to share TikToks. So his dad kind of has this Disney moment of, I blamed everybody else but you, and then his mom tries to kill herself. Which she says in her suicide note, hey, I do know that this was partly me. Both on the series and in real life, she doesn't succeed. She does end up living. And the 2 police officers were reinstated, which did happen in real life.
And what pissed me off so much, and I'm going to go up on this is my hill and I'm going to die on it.
Okay.
The juxtaposition, I can't even say the word, juxtaposition. Thank you. Of Glenda getting the award and the police getting the award.
That's the next episode. I have notes on that too. Yeah, Glenda gets this little bitty award in a basement.
Yep.
But I did look at that, and I think that was just the series. I don't think they actually got an award. So just FYI.
That's good.
But
that's good. Well, especially if they, like I said, I'm hoping that those police officers were a kind of a conglomeration of multiple people.
No.
So they were were they the ones making phone calls?
Oh, no. Okay. No, and in this series, I think it was a different one, too. Okay. No, in real life, those police officers actually did get fired.
Good.
So they did get fired, but their union got them back.
Right.
They were reinstated. So they did try a little bit harder in real life, but came back.
Yeah. And
a judge did rule that they did what they could to help. I forget how it was phrased, but basically they weren't in the wrong for returning Conarac, and it's like, can we look a little bit harder into that? So legally, they were able to come back. All right, episode 9.
Hold on. Deep cleansing breath. Okay.
Are we better?
I don't know.
All right, episode 9 is entitled Bullshit.
Why'd you point at me for that?
I was putting the
bullshit. Bullshit.
Because of your Dahmer dad theory. Bullshit.
This is the day the podcast ends.
We are still fighting about Dahmer's dad.
Go.
I never thought that would be what would break us up.
I need to see a therapist.
His mom. Still practicing. No, she's not.
Okay.
Alright, so Dahmer's in jail. He gets fan mail.
Oh.
And he likes it. There's a comic book made about him. He makes a comment about with his stupid ass humor in jail, and they say the inmates are not having it, and he says, well, my fans like it. But the thing is, he's not wrong. I don't understand how people fall in love with inmates. He killed people, and you're like, dude, I'm your fan.
Yeah. Draw me a picture, Jeffrey.
Yes.
So one of the interesting things I did read up was that he actually had gained some popularity in high school for making jokes like that and being very kind of off color.
It was called doing a Dahmer.
Doing a Dahmer. Yeah. That took on a whole new meaning later on. But I think they were trying to justify. Okay, the way I feel the series set it up is that he was trying to get killed. That since he wasn't given the death penalty, that he was doing everything in his power to try to get killed by pissing off the inmates.
See, I took it as this worked in high school. Maybe it'll work here.
Yeah. I don't know.
So that's interesting. So two different theories. Yeah. Was he trying to be more well-liked, or was he trying to get himself killed?
I would like to clarify that I do not feel that he was trying to get killed in real life. In the series, I think they were making him seem like that's what he was doing. Okay. Almost to try to get, not sympathy, but basically the last couple episodes just are trying to wrap the entire thing up in a nice little bow. And there is no way that this case can ever be wrapped up in a nice little bow. Does that make sense?
I mean, he's dead.
Yeah.
That bow is nice.
Yeah.
I did like okay, I don't know if I liked it. So, as soon as it starts showing the whale noises, but it doesn't show you what it is yet, I started cracking up because I can't tell you how many people I've irritated with whale noises. Like, that is my go-to.
That might be the way that our friendship breaks up. Dia is texting me whale noises again.
If there's a way... There's a way that I can get whale noises into your ears, I will do it.
So I think about the fact I suffered from anxiety when I was a child, and I came from a garden center, and for some reason they were selling those nature sound CDs at the garden center, and my parents bought me one, and it was like a mix of whale sounds and like insects in the forest. And so I do think of that, and then of course I think of Dory. I speak whale.
I start giggling when I hear whale noises. I'm like, who can I do it to now? So then that was something, Dahmer and I had in common. I'm like, maybe I need to cut that out, but I can't because it's way too funny. Oh my goodness, if somebody's got like their Bluetooth, or you can connect to their Bluetooth and get on Spotify, whale noises is one of my saved playlists.
You just like everybody who's ever had whale noises pop up on their like.
You're welcome.
Dia did it. Doing a Dia.
Oh God. Oh, I'm starting to sound way too. No.
Yeah,
no.
I'm telling you what, I'm inching closer and closer to the wall. I'm gonna open the door.
I don't know if I want to give up whale noises, so maybe I'll find something else.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's
whole. I mean, I like clowns, and I'm not going to compare myself to Gacy.
I don't know. Okay, that's a whole nother thing. How you like clowns?
I actually don't. I was trying to be relevant.
Okay. Mission accomplished. Sorry, I ruined that one. Way to play it cool, Dia. So then we find out that his father writes a book. Yeah. He gets great reviews on it, actually. And then that's what you're talking about. Yeah. He sees that his father is going on TV to talk about it. But the families of the victims band together to keep it from profiting, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And also the money that Dahmer makes in prison from working and anything that he receives from fans also go to the victims, which, yeah, do it.
Well, I think I had really mixed feelings about the dad writing a book, because part of me, I mean, like, I think that would be a therapeutic way I would deal things, because that's what I would do. But I think I immediately would have been like, here's the deal, I'm going to write this book, all the money's going to the families.
I know. And I thought they showed that really well, because it was very contradictory, or at least just confusing.
Yeah.
It was contradictory in the way that the dad says in the series, oh, well, I'm just doing it so other people can learn from it.
Right.
But then they don't like that the money's getting taken away from them. So that's the contradiction. The confusing part is, were they just upset about an income stream stopping, or were they actually hoping to make money off the story?
Right.
And if it was written from a place of learning and I'm trying to give you this knowledge, then I think that's a great idea. That book needs to be out there.
Right.
But profiting off of it, no. And there was talk about a movie being based off of it. It fell through. Then.
Yeah.
Since then, look at what Netflix is doing. But then we also see how the harassment starts for Conorak's family, which was incessant. And how are you blaming the victim's family?
I would like to do a number with a ball peen hammer on those people.
It's like bullying someone. You're mad at someone for how they look. Why are you mad about how they look? Why are you mad about something about them? Why are you mad about the victim's family for their son being brutally murdered?
Yeah. And again, then to make it a race thing. I mean...
Yes.
That whole thing was disgusting.
It was. It shows the brother having nightmares. We really see how his family is struggling with the loss. Again, something that I think is so missing from podcast shows, everything else. We so focus on serial killer, we forget there's a whole family dealing with
the dad broke my heart
horror.
in the fact that, I mean, like, when he's basically handed $800,000, for a family that was struggling as much as they were, and he just, there was a scene where he was just completely, he has all this money, but just completely, it doesn't even begin to help the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, the whole thing is tragic.
We also see how it affects Glinda and everyone in the apartment complex.
Yeah.
Knowing what happened right in their home, which should be their safe space.
Yeah.
And it just became a media circus. It became like a tourist trap. And how these people are trying to live their lives and get over what happened in their safe space. And you have all these uninvited...
Can we talk about the tourist trap?
Okay.
Talk about something that chat my ass. I would like to know if that would really happened.
It 100%. That's why I kind of included it, because it had to happen. It became a shrine.
Well, those little frat boys that came and took pictures. That's what I'm curious if she actually did get arrested.
Oh, the daughter.
The daughter.
Because it shows the daughter
right.
destroying one of the cameras because she gets so upset.
Right. And they immediately took swift and immediate action and arrested her. So
that would be interesting to know if it was, or if they just did it to again show the divide.
I'm hoping that that's what it is, that it shows the divide. But I just, yes.
And it goes right from that into what we were talking about earlier with the officers receiving their award, and Glinda receives an award in a basement.
Yep.
So then we learn, and this is all true, and I love this part, so this might be the second bright point.
Okay.
They're going to have an auction of Dahmer's stuff with all the proceeds going to the families,
as
it should. So I just want to say his name. Joseph Zilber bought everything and then had it disposed in an undisclosed landfill somewhere in Illinois, I believe, and he gave the money to the families.
I love that.
That actually happened, and if you do research on Joseph Zilber, he was an amazing guy.
That's awesome.
And the last couple years of his life, he and his wife had it set up. There's just a really quick side note. Yeah. Just because I think it's amazing. He and his wife, he was very wealthy.
Right.
After they passed away, their trust was to basically give all their money away. And they got to the end of their lives and they were like, you know what? Why does the people after us get to benefit from this? Why can't we give our money away and we get to see how it works?
That's cool.
So they gave away all their money the last couple of years of their lives and got to see how it affected people. And that's
what I want to be when I grow up.
I do too.
That's pretty cool.
I mean, I'll just take the rich part. But yeah, so that was really neat to see. So he really was, and they set it up much longer in the series to show how he becomes increasingly irritated at this hero worship that they have around it, and that's why he did it, was so that nothing could become some sacred piece or and he's absolutely right, because it would have.
100%.
And I'm so glad that there's somebody like that.
Yeah.
So then it cuts to Ronald Flowers.
Hold on, I do want to say,
yes,
Niecy Nash's speech when she got the
award.
You, Niecy. That whole do better, because that's exactly, I mean, that just is, my son actually says that to me, my youngest says that to me a lot whenever I say something. I'll be like, oh man, I have a headache. He's like, well, you just need to be better, do better. I'm like, so just things like that. But just I mean, that just sums up with all the amount of anger and passion, everything that you'd want to say to those, just do better.
Yeah. You're getting this award and she's still like, no.
Do better.
Do better.
Please do better.
Yeah, she was amazing.
Love you, Niecy.
So then we are with Ronald Flowers counseling another young man and encouraging him to live. And Ronald was the one that was able to get away. Dahmer had brought him to his grandma's house. His grandma came down. In the series, they showed Ron being put on a bus and leaving.
Yeah.
In real life, he had been he had gone to the hospital and reported his attack to the police. And the police told him it was Ron's word against Dahmer's. And nothing ever happened. But that was a way they kind of wrapped that up too and showed that he was actually growing out of it, telling someone else it's okay, hang on. And then the apartment building gets demolished, as it should have been.
Yep.
And Dahmer gets stabbed in the neck in prison. So I feel like
it was a good wrap up.
Yeah, it was. It was great. All right, so now we're on to episode 10, which was just like...
Okay, so is this one have a name? Okay, so episode 9 is going to be Do Better.
Do Better, okay.
Okay,
like
and then
that.
episode 10 is... Okay.
Because episode 10, and I feel like through this entire series, there's so many subtle things that they did when making this, and it's beautiful. But when it opens with the van pulling up, saying PDM contractors, and if you know anything about some of these stories, or maybe you're not as crazy as I am, I was like, what are we doing here? So we see a man bringing a young man into his house. They walk past a clown pick, which should also be a giveaway right there.
I'm just
in
saying.
1977.
Yeah.
Drugs him, drowns him naked, and he's shown in a clown costume, but he didn't actually do it. But the visual of him being in the clown costume
is terrifying.
Yes, and drowning him. And that, my friends, is...
I would just like to say it is kind of the whole Catholic thing got me.
Oh, with the rosary, and he ties his hands up with a rosary?
Yeah. I wonder if that... I actually don't know if that happened.
I don't know that it did.
It would make sense where Gacy was.
Yeah.
For him to be diehard Catholic. But
I took it more as cinematic license.
Yeah.
But it was brilliant. And
it was creepy as all get
So
out.
if you don't know anything, then you're like, okay, all right, this makes sense. They're going to compare these two. But if you do know about true crime, you're like, John Wayne Gacy?
Yeah.
He's in here? So then, that was 1977. They showed that back to 1994, and here's where we are. They're talking about Gacy getting ready to get executed, and Glenda's coworker calls Gacy the worst. Glenda disagrees. All right, now fight.
Yeah.
Which one is worse?
Oh, Gacy.
Gacy or Dahmer?
Gacy. See, this is the hill I will die on. I appreciate everybody else's opinion. There are just so many, I mean, like when you look at the cruelty aspect.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
The most tragic, I mean, one of the biggest tragedies for Dahmer, like I said earlier, is the fact that it was able to be done. And I think that is the tragedy in it. Whereas Gacy, and they abuse their power. I mean, no. Hands down, I can't even go into it.
I know, I wanted to take Glenda's side in it as she's talking about it, and I know her experience was
awful.
Awful. So I understand why she would consider that that Dahmer was the worst. But while she's talking, I was still like, dude, I don't know. Yeah. I think Gacy about doubled Dahmer's numbers. Yeah. And like you said, the cruelty factor, he killed to kill.
There's a handful,
tortured to torture.
There's a handful of cases that I will not touch with a 10-foot pole because of the cruelty that is involved in it. And there's a difference between being horrific and being cruel. Mm-hmm. And there is,
Gacy was awful.
Yeah, Gacy was awful. Gain was awful.
Well,
Dahmer was awful, but they still.
I feel like we would have to cover Gacy like we covered Kemper as far as
Mm-hmm.
And then he killed someone.
Yes. Yeah,
In
I don't
a
think I could.
awful manner.
I could probably handle doing Gacy, but it's a hard one.
It's hard to learn about him. You almost have to learn about everything to understand the monster that was behind him.
You need something like this Dahmer series on Gacy.
Oh,
I know.
Ooh, yeah.
I know.
I don't think I'd watch it though.
Yeah.
So then we start to see how the other inmates are getting tired of Dahmer and his antics, kind of like what we were talking about, whether or not he was trying to do it on purpose in this series or not. But especially Christopher Scarver, really getting tired of Dahmer shit.
Yeah, and he definitely was having some psychotic issues.
He did. He was diagnosed schizophrenic with a messianic complex.
Yeah.
That came out smooth. I didn't even practice that night.
Yeah.
Oof. So Dahmer starts exploring religion. Again, this happened in real life. He decides he wants to be baptized. He talks. I thought this was brilliant in the show too. Dahmer talks with his chaplain about forgiveness. And then the next scene is Glenda talking to her chaplain, her pastor, about forgiving Dahmer. So Dahmer wants God to forgive him. Glenda's saying, how do I forgive Dahmer? And to me, that was Niecy's best scene.
Other than the fact, I mean, like, I would just slap the chaplain, which would probably make me go to hell, when he says, there's going to come a point where they're going to say Jeffrey Dahmer and you're not even going to bat an eye.
I know.
Like, there is no plane that would happen.
No. That part was off. But Niecy's acting in that was... Oh my goodness, because you could feel it.
Oh, she's
her
amazing.
Saying, Niecy,
we love you.
Yes.
Okay, so was he talking to his chaplain when he was asking about why he thinks they're serial killers? Or was that when he was talking to his therapist?
No, his chaplain.
Okay, so I thought that was a very interesting conversation. Very definitely put in there for cinema.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think that the theories, I think the theories are kind of spot on.
Yeah.
The people coming back, the Nam was just a night. I mean, I can't even go into the horrors of Nam, and the fact that these men are coming back and trying to be reestablished into normal life and be parents, and
without the mental health that we have now.
Right.
Even now, I'm wearing my Till Valhalla shirt. Keep fucking going.
Yeah.
22 veterans die a day from suicide.
Yeah.
And this Till Valhalla.
Nice.
Helps with that. But even now with the mental health resources we have, 22 veterans a day, way too many.
Yeah.
You're coming back from this god-awful place, dealing with god-awful issues.
And coming back to the United States where you're treated god-awful.
Yes. Have no support whatsoever. They were getting booed and spit on coming back, and then having to deal with all of that in your head. So yes, I do think
that had a huge part of it.
It did, and I think we need to shine a light on that.
Yeah, 100%. And then definitely the drug. I mean, like, and I'm not, I'm definitely down on the mom. I do not like her. I did not like her character. I hope that her character was not nearly as awful as, or her person was not as awful as their character. But I'm not upset about the fact that she had mental health issues and it had to be on medication. I mean, that doesn't bother me. I think there is a possibility of a connection between medicines and some of the issues. But I have a problem. And I'm not talking as somebody who's adopted children. I'm not talking about parents that give their children up for adoption or things like that. But I have a fundamental issue with moms that abandon their children. And even though he was 18, or almost 18, you don't walk away.
Well, and the way that she did it, even in real life, it was abandonment.
Yeah.
So.
I'm going to get off that hill now.
Okay.
Soapbox off.
But then, all right, so we have him talking to his chaplain.
Yep.
We have Glenda talking to her pastor, and then we're back to Dahmer talking to his dad about forgiveness.
Right.
And his dad agrees to forgive him, which I thought, I don't know, that's warm and fuzzy like Disney, but I think they were doing it to put in a neat box, but I also think it was to show Dahmer's, how he's softening about how his conversion is real. It shows that Glinda and Conorak's dad are at a wedding, and kind of how they have come further, but they still have so far to go, and one day we won't have to pretend to be so strong. We will be that strong.
Right.
Beautifully done. It shows the moms still fighting together, the moms of the victims, to put a stop to the comic books, to put a stop to, again, glorifying Dahmer and making sure that their sons' voices are heard.
Yeah.
And then it brings us to Dahmer getting baptized on the same day that Gacy was executed, on the same day that there was a solar eclipse.
Yep.
And you can go down this rabbit hole on Reddit of, does it mean something? It doesn't mean something.
Yeah.
What could it mean? All of that. It's got to be. I mean, I think that's all very coincidental. I do think it's symbolic. Now, I don't know exactly. There were some funky theories, like Gacy took on Dahmer's sins when he died, and I don't think all of that, but I do think there's some...
I remember having a fundamental issue, and this is going to open a whole big bag of worms, that... And again, this is my opinion. I respect everybody else's opinion, but I had a really hard time. I remember fighting with my aunt who was, who's Christian, and I have a really big problem with the fact that Dahmer getting baptized immediately washes away all the sins. And I'm just going to leave it at that. So, in theory, and I just don't know how it's that easy.
We're going to get into theological discussion. See, now, I do think it is, because that's the point of forgiveness. It's like what the chaplain was saying.
Right.
Jesus didn't say, what did you do, or all of that. He just said, yeah, you're forgiven. So essentially, I think that makes sense to me. However, what I do think that we're never promised is freedom from the consequences.
That's true.
Now, he was up on, like, when the chaplain's talking, the guy's up on the cross. So he's paying the consequence for what he did.
Right.
So Jesus isn't like, oh no, come down, I'll help you.
Yeah.
So to me, that's what it is. Like, okay, like if your son asks for forgiveness for doing something wrong, you're going to be like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
But you still did something wrong, so you still ran the car into the back of the shop, so we're going to have to take care of those consequences. That's a true life story. But so that's kind of what I look at it as. Yeah. If Dahmer was serious, if it really did happen, then yes, I do believe he was forgiven. However, he still had consequences. He was still going to be in jail. Whether or not he believed in God, he was still going to be there.
Yeah, I did the visual of Mother Teresa walking around heaven and running into Jeffrey Dahmer, just kind of...
Can you imagine? But Mother Teresa seemed like such a wonderful person. She'd be like, oh.
She'll be like my mom. Oh, honey, you did some fucked up things.
Yes. That's okay. You're here now. But honey.
Oh, yeah.
I have to pat you because that's your mom. So anyway, that's a whole rabbit hole we could discuss. Yeah. But then we see Dahmer get called in for work duty. And at this point, you know that the episode is ending and it's all getting wrapped up. And he says, you have work duty. And you're like, oh.
Where did everyone go?
Yes. Well, you see Scarver get called in for work duty. And it's another, and then you see the guard leave and you're like, oh no. And then Dahmer looks around, and again, well done, because it's almost like he looks around, he starts kind of panicking and having that acceptance. Mm-hmm. He gets really nervous. You hear a noise, you hear, again, yelling and a clink and silence. From the other room, Scarver comes back out to where it's just him and Dahmer, and a great scene between the actors. Yeah. Well acted, well written. Everything about that was... So, I take back what I was saying about the first few episodes. I'm sorry. It was really well done.
It was, the whole series was very well done.
So, they had this amazing exchange, which I don't think happened at all in real life, but for the film, was gorgeous. And Dahmer gets murdered. Yeah. Boom. And that happened in real life. He got beat to death in real life. Yeah. And then we have the debate over his brain. Yep. I was torn on this.
I was too. I was actually kind of upset at the dad. Yes. It was like the one thing I was like pro the mom for. Like, you know,
I think it's hard, but I would want to, okay, let's study it, but how do you keep it from becoming this icon? How do you keep it from falling into the wrong hands, essentially?
Yeah.
So from scientific standpoint, yes, I think it should be studied. It would have been interesting because he wasn't diagnosed with anything.
Right.
So what did happen, kind of like Israel Keys, but to keep it from being this icon, how do you do that?
Yeah.
So I think it was probably better it was destroyed, but that was rough.
That was rough.
It ends. Last scene is Linda fighting for the park to be built as a memorial for the victims. They say that, you know, people don't want to be reminded, and I love what she said about how, no, that doesn't erase what happened, it just erases the victims. Which is why we renamed this podcast, why we're kind of doing the format that we're doing, and we don't want the victims' names to be erased, and she's absolutely right.
It would be amazing if we could rewrite history. Mm-hmm. The truth of the matter is that once we forget history, we're
doomed to repeat it.
Mm-hmm. There's a reason that, Auschwitz still stands.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Because there are people that deny that the Holocaust even happened, even with...
We're just triggering me all over today.
There's people that deny it, and that's why we have the actual prison where they were kept. There will be people that glorify Dahmer. Even the series has made people be like, oh,
I could change him.
Yeah. No, we need to remember what he did and where he did it and who suffered. And then the series ends. The end screen is all of his victims.
Yes.
With their names. And I love that. And what a beautiful way to end it. And I love that it didn't end with Dahmer's murder. It ended with Linda standing up for the victims.
Well, and I hope that now that we have the series and it's brought back to light, build the damn park.
Yeah, because to my understanding, there's nothing there right now. Like, nothing.
Build the damn park.
Yeah. Put 17 trees there. Do something, but make something beautiful so that we know what happened.
100%. Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah.
That was Dahmer.
I'm exhausted.
Episode 6 to 10. That was intense. But our friendship made it through. We lasted.
Maybe.
Alright, we'll see. We'll see if there's an episode 8. Stay tuned next week.
Yes, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and that's the great thing about this podcast is that, I mean, I will respect everybody's opinion. And, you know, everybody has their opinion because their life created their opinions. And that's great. So hopefully they'll do the same for ours. And I respect your dislike of the dad.
I respect your standing up for him. Being Team Lionel.
What about my love of Paranormal Unsolved?
I do not I respect that. I do not appreciate it.
Well, you're not going to like next week.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear.
It's October. We got to be
October. You didn't ask me about this, so this is like the Slender Man. You learned from the Slender Man.
I did.
Don't ask her again.
Don't ask.
She'll catch on the next time. Dia's going to say no if I ask her again about a creepy one.
Yeah, this one's creepy.
All right. I can't wait.
Yay. Okay.
We'll see you
Okay,
next
well,
week.
make sure to like. Well, hold on.
I'm so sorry.
Like, subscribe.
Follow.
Follow. We want you guys to follow us on all our social media platforms.
Maybe interact with us. Maybe we need to start
We need more friends.
We're so sad. We need like I keep calling him Gein, Ed Gein. Gein versus Gacy versus Dahmer. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Did you ever watch, what is it, Celebrity Deathmatch? The little...
That's what I'm thinking. The claymation. I feel like Gein would win. Gein
just
versus
based
Gacy.
On the craziness.
Yeah.
I mean, Gein would just look at you.
No. Not that Gacy wasn't super... They were all creepy looking, but...
Gacy at least was able to put a front on that is, you know... Was he a Boy Scout? Was he a Boy Scout guy? He was a Boy Scout guy, I think.
I think he was, and of course, the clown, which is what he's most infamous for, but he would perform at parties and such. I feel like Geen just had that, like, evil...
Yeah, he just was
everything.
creepy.
Yes.
So, okay. Well,
All right, Geen versus Dahmer versus
let us know.
Gacy.
Who do you think would win?
Yes.
Win?
What a fucked up competition we are. Let's throw a fourth in there. Let's do it. We'll have a...
Grissom.
Grissom. Okay.
We'll throw Grissom in there.
I feel like his... Maybe Kemper.
Okay. I can do Kemper.
Okay, so we need brackets. Wow, we've gone dark.
We've gone
It's
dark.
probably time to end.
Yes.
All right.
Have a great week.
See you later.